of her topics was about imposter syndrome. And so she put up the definition and I read it and I was like, wow.
Welcome, guys, to another episode of Scattered Seeds, the podcast, presented to you by the Marketable Woman themselves. I'm Rose.
I'm Kacee. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, and if you tuned in last week, thank you. We appreciate it. If you find value in today's episode, please like, comment, or subscribe below. We love it.
We love it. And so what were we talking about last week? Imposter syndrome, right? Because that's the new topic, the new buzzword that everybody's talking about, imposter syndrome. And when I say buzzword and topic, I don't mean to take away from the severity or the realness of it. I just think that sometimes we things are called into our purview or they're put into perspective and it becomes popular. And not to say that people can't relate to it because it is popular, but it becomes popular, so it's a little bit watered down. But I do think that there's some value in having a discussion about it. So Rose, can you help us understand what imposter syndrome is and maybe how it relates to the fear of success?
Well, I just realized this whole buzzword about imposter syndrome. I had to ask you the other day. I'm like, girl, I'm seeing this imposter syndrome thing everywhere.
Right.
And I feel like I can relate. And essentially what it is that you don't feel qualified. You might have some success in whatever industry you're in. Like for i.e., I'm in banking, right? I was in banking. And I might not feel like I'm good enough for that executive position all at the same time while I'm actually doing those things that the executives are doing, right. Even better than what they're doing. But I'm kind of undervaluing my own worth and I'm kind of making up all these excuses or having these thoughts of why I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified enough. I shouldn't be here. Oh my gosh, they're going to find me out. Oh my gosh, they're going to see me. They're going to know. That's what imposter syndrome is. This feeling like you don't belong, like you're not supposed to be there. You're not good enough. What's your take on imposter syndrome, Kacee?
I think when I first saw it, let me take it out. When I first saw it, I want to say I was probably on Twitter. Y'all know I love to be on Twitter and be a hoochie, but I was on Twitter and somebody that I follow who's also a podcaster, I believe, and one of her topics was about imposter syndrome. And so she put up the definition and I read it and I was like, wow, okay, I can totally relate to that. But for me, along with everything that Rose said, the way that I experienced it was having a seat at the table and feeling like I didn't deserve that seat. So being a part of conversations or people asking me for my opinion or adding value to conversations or even developing meetings or creating committees or just adding creative value content and still feeling like I had to question myself. Mm-hmm. Why was I being asked these questions? Why was my value being requested and still not feeling like even when others kind of saw my value before I didn't understand it. And so that to me was imposter syndrome because I had to seat at the table. I was sitting there. I was involved. I was having all these actionable items, but I still felt like I didn't deserve it.
Why was that?
Self-sabotage.
Ooh, my honey just told me that the other day. He said, you love self-sabotaging.
Can I tell you how transparent that man is? Because he be just reading you. You're right. But yes, self-sabotage. So self-sabotage, how does that translate?
Ooh, all over.
From fear of success. What have been some of your personal experiences with self-sabotage and fear of success? Do they translate for you? Do they go hand in hand?
Yes, they do, definitely. There's so many, personally, professionally.
Which do you care to share, darling?
Let's do personal.
Okay.
Because I think that relates heavy right now is looking always for something to be wrong. Us women, our minds are going all the time. And I'm a detective. I'm going to be honest. I'm a private eye. I have my spider, he calls it my spider senses are tingling. Because I'm into
the nose starts twitching.
I'm like, Kacee's not feeling good.
No, this is real life. This is real life, folks.
Seriously. So, but then sometimes borderline, I do some self-sabotaging where it's kind of like from the past, I had to really face that the past had affected my future and I wasn't really aware of it. I didn't anything had to do with anything.
Right.
Until I started bringing those same behaviors, like, oh, who you texting? What you doing? What you doing? What you looking at? Where you going? What time you gonna be back? Why you answer the phone? That's kind of trauma, right? Not trauma, kind of. It is trauma from the past, from prior relationships, and bringing that into new relationships, self-sabotaging what I have because I'm trying to create this kind of chaos when I'm used to. Like, there's no way he can just be not texting somebody. There's no way that he can be where he said he is. Like, there's no way. So I was kind of self-sabotaging my relationship, and I had to get it together.
So let me ask you this, in the sphere of self-sabotage and complete transparency, because you're talking about those trauma experiences, and sometimes we trauma bond over those experiences, right? Because this is what we're used to and this is what we know. Do you feel like at some point you started to equate love with that trauma, with those traumatic experiences? Like if you weren't being cheated on, if you weren't having to play detective, if you didn't have to go through his phone, if you weren't, just doing all these crazy things to figure out what he was doing or where he was at, was it love?
You know what? I can honestly say no. I didn't equate that, because the real Rose that, like, my higher self knew that, girl, you acting crazy. Like, that's not you. There's something going on that you need to deal with. That I never really sat with myself for a long time. I always had a boyfriend. Let's be honest. I always had a man. And that's a problem, because I was afraid to be by myself, and I didn't see it as that until kind of getting into my last relationship and really having to be by myself to really find out who Rose is, because I didn't like how I was behaving, and I knew that wasn't me. So I had to get that together. So I would say no, I don't equate that to love, because I knew that love shouldn't feel like that. I shouldn't feel like that. My feelings shouldn't be anxiety, fear of losing, not feeling worthy, not like I was good enough, because I knew I was good enough. Like, there was always that other part of me that, like, no, girl, you're good enough. You're the bomb. Like, what's wrong with you? Yes. You're so dope. You're so aware. You're so thoughtful. But that other part of you that you're not dealing with, I guess my shadow, I kept on coming up.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to kind of do my shadow work and actually not get rid of it, but know how to use that to my advantage and not self-sabotage myself. Girl.
So what about professionally? Have you had experiences with self-sabotage professionally?
Yes, I would say more so I self-sabotage myself in the professional realm by dimming my light. Like, I thought about, like, when you're maybe in a meeting and you choose not to speak up. There was periods where I was kind of really becoming who I was in my professional career. I would choose not to speak up because the people around me, I didn't want to kind of be outcasted or looked at like, oh, who she thinks she is? Why she act like that?
Right.
Why she like that? And it stems all the way back to, I can remember in high school when I was a cheerleader, and you wanted to fit in. I'm on the cheerleading team. Barely didn't make the cheerleading team. That was another story, but I made it. And, most of the girls, they're from around a different neighborhood. I'm not saying I lived in the suburbs. I lived in borderline the hood too, but we lived in a house, whatever. I talked a certain way. And the girls on the cheerleading team said, why you talk like that? I was like what? She's like, you talk white. And I was like, how do I talk white? She's like, because you like always happy. And I was like, oh, okay. And from there, you kind of start to mold yourself to a certain way to not feel outcasted. But then I had to learn that me doing that is taking away who Rose really is. And the beauty and authenticity is really being who you are. If I sound white, and first of all, the ignorance in that comment, but we're not going to.
Because that just hurts my soul.
But we need to learn that. We didn't know that back then, right? It was, if you sounded a certain way, you act white. Mm-hmm. And I took that into my professional career. You're around different people, and you kind of dim your light, not answer stuff, not give your opinion on a topic that you can add value to. But essentially, I had to learn from sitting with myself and having that solitude and practicing my meditation and all that I can't do that, and it was hurting me. It wasn't helping me grow. I was staying in that same cycle that I didn't like the results of. So I did what I needed to do, and I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. So I can say now, I go in a room and I'm most of the time the first one to speak up if I have something to say.
That's important. That's really important if you have something to say. So oftentimes we get in this habit of talking just to talk or speaking just to speak, right? Just to have something to say. So if what you're saying doesn't add any value, it's perfectly okay not to say anything.
Because I'm going to be seen anyway. I don't need to be the loudest.
I mean, they knew you as soon as you walked in. Rose has arrived.
Oh, thank you. Hey, talk to me, because I know you have a lot of experiences.
First of all, you didn't have to call me out like that. But yeah, I do actually. I can think of a couple that comes to my head. So the first one, it was like probably 2012, and who cares who I was dating at the time. But anyway, so he had said something to me along the lines of, and this is to my personal self-sabotage experience, like, yeah, it was 2012. So I had just bought my house and I was in a really good space and work was going well. I want to say I was probably just promoted. Things were just going well. And I remember I was walking, I'll never forget, I was walking into Walgreens on North Avenue, where you see everybody and their mama, right? Walking into Walgreens, and I was on the phone with this person, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm experiencing so much anxiety, and like, why? And I was like, I don't know, I'm having such a good day. And even now, I say the same thing to Rose. This is why I bring this up. It's like things will be going so well for me, and I will just have so much anxiety because I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. So anyway, back to that conversation. So I was saying that to him, like, I just came from the closing, and I forget what I was going to Walgreens for, whatever. And I was like, everything's great. I'm excited. I'm going to move in. I think I was about to go get a smoothie. And he's like, so what's the problem? And I was like, the problem is there isn't a problem. And so in my mind, I'm going to create a problem. And so thinking back to that experience and similar experiences, like I think last week or the week before I had a similar experience, I was having a great week and things were going absolutely well. But anxiety has a way of playing on the abscesses in your mind where things have gone immensely wrong and telling you, oh, girl, don't get comfortable because it's going to go wrong again. Mm-hmm. So when you don't do that shadow work, because I'm the queen of moving on, and I can self-assess and say that, I will move the hell on. I may not heal, I may not fix it, I may not talk about it, but one thing I'm going to do is move on.
Big Scorpio energy.
Big Scorpio energy. I'm going to pick it up and keep it moving. Pack it up, literally, and keep it moving. And so in doing shadow work over the past, I want to say 2 or 3 months, I've been really intentional about doing shadow work. And it has made some things come to surface that I have completely just buried because I didn't want to think about it. And so again, trauma bonds, trauma experiences, and the way that you react to certain things or the way that I react to them is to kind of just suppress them and keep it moving. And so when you're doing shadow work, you're actually calling these things up and saying, what is the correlation between what I'm experiencing now, how I'm feeling, to what has happened? And for me, I have forgot about a lot of it, like completely forgot about it because I didn't want to remember it. And so when I'm sitting here, I'm meditating, I am doing my bowls and saying my affirmations, and I would have these like really vivid dreams. And I'm like, are these dreams? Am I lucid dreaming? Is it dreams, or is this my subconscious saying, hey, remember this happened? And then in doing that, I was able to tie things together and say, okay, so this is why you react to this, because this is what happened. So fast forward to recently, I was having a conversation with another person, and we were talking about Scorpio traits. And I said something along the lines of, well, big Scorpio energy, I'm possessive. I can be very possessive. And, with being possessive means that I sometimes have, or I struggle with distance, right? Like it can feel like I'm smothering, or it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming for me too. And he looked at me, he said, well, you don't have to possess things that belong to you. And maybe the reason why you're possessive is because you have a fear of rejection.
Drops the mic.
Snatch my edges and gather me, because that's exactly what it is. So I just had to sit there and be quiet like a big girl, because I was like, talk to me like that. But the reality of the situation is that's the truth. So when you have somebody or someone or multiple people who can kind of call you out when you're exhibiting those behaviors or displaying those behaviors that have been detrimental in your past, and be honest with yourself, it hurts. It's not fun. It's not easy. It doesn't feel good, but it's a reality. And if it's something that you're intentional about working on, it will resurface and it will come up and it won't be pretty. And thinking about professionally, I would probably say I have similar experiences. I've always been, I guess we'll call it teetering, right? One foot in the hood and one foot in the corporate world, or even back in high school, being in like AP and honors classes and going to college prep courses and then going to hang out on the block and fighting and, doing all that stuff. Which wasn't necessarily conducive to the person that I wanted to become, but you kind of hold on to who you feel like you are, or what you feel like you should, because this is where you've been socially conditioned, where you grew up, where you were raised, or the people that you know. But I never really fit in there either. And so then when I finally found my footing and I was okay with speaking eloquently, because I'm not even gonna call it talking at other things, that pisses me off. I'm just okay with it. But I remember the same thing. I would go into meetings or I'd be at work and I would just sit there and be quiet because I didn't want to bring up something that may be out of context or maybe too much and then been viewed a different way. But then once I got comfortable, I just would say whatever I wanted to say at every meeting. I'd be on every conference call just like, nope, don't agree. This is what I think. This is how we should do it. So, yeah, I think self-sabotage has presented itself, and sometimes it still continues to present itself personally and professionally, and just about the way that it's managed. And I can also tell the difference, kind of segueing into the next topic. I can feel the difference when I'm actively working on my self-care and self-love, how I respond to those nasty messages from anxiety and depression and everything that's in my mind. I can tell the difference. When I'm actively in my practice and working on caring for myself, I can manage that better. But when I have kind of absolved and retracted and I'm not being active and walking or exercising or journaling or meditating, then anxiety will absolutely take over, period. So self-love, you want to get into that?
Yes, but I do, before we go on to self-love, I think our viewers will want to know. We were talking about shadow work, and I know we touched on what it is to do, but I feel like we need to go just a little tad bit deeper.
Okay.
Just a tad bit. So
All right.
I want you to lead the way. What is shadow work?
I don't know. It's like, it's a lot. Okay, so shadow work, I would define it as, and I know we say this a lot too, so you have to kind of redefine it for yourself and what makes sense to you. It's really sitting with yourself, and you can literally sit down, which I literally have to take a seat because my mind goes, my legs go, my feet go, my mouth go, I just be going. So I literally have to take a seat, sit down, find something, a comfortable space. Sometimes I'll use binaural beats just to kind of get my mind in the correct space, and other times I'll sit in complete silence. But it's really recalling your past. It's really sitting back and thinking about, okay, so let's just say today I felt triggered by somebody said something to me. Somebody said, Kacee, you're not yourself. And it triggered me. But why did it trigger me? So I may sit down and I'll write that down like, somebody said, Kacee, you're not yourself. And I felt triggered. And so then I'll sit there and say, okay, this triggered me because I'm not feeling like myself. But why am I not feeling like myself? Because I've had this experience in the past when, somebody comes into my life or they're around and then I'm afraid that they're going to leave or that they'll reject me for some reason or that there's something about me that isn't good enough or there's something that I need to change. That's shadow work. You're making the connections between how you're feeling now, how you have felt in the past, what you have done that has led to that, and what you can do to kind of get out of that space. So whatever you need to do to get you through those connections, whether you need to draw circles, you need to do a picture, you need to just literally, I draw arrows and connections, where I am, where I was, where I have been, and kind of tying it all together.
Great. I hope that helps.
How do you do your shadow work, darling?
Well, for me, my shadow work is really calling all those parts of me that I probably don't really enjoy or I don't like. Those pieces of me that I feel like I'm not my best self or that I'm embarrassed of or that I'm hiding. So parts of me that I'm
hiding.
I don't want nobody to see. I'm tucking it away in the shadow like, oh my gosh, if they find this part about me out, the jig's up. So with me, it is really actually talking about it really helps me. Being like having a confidant, somebody that you can confide in, which you are one of them, that I know there's no judgment in at all, because that's the biggest piece. Like we all want that and we don't want to be judged. And another thing is we don't want our business running around. We want to be able to tell our story and not have somebody else tell our story for us.
Ooh.
And I think that's the problem nowadays and why a lot of us women are closed off, especially you hear a lot of women saying, I don't have women friends. And I'm not saying you need women friends. You don't. Because you don't really need anybody, but it's nice to have a support system. And the reason why is because you've been betrayed by a woman before, or you've been the betrayer.
Yes.
That's clear, right? So that's part of my shadow work is actually having somebody I can confide in and really tell them those deep, dark secrets that I try to hide or I'm embarrassed of. And me releasing it, it takes away that chain. It's kind of like, ooh, I can almost fly now. Yeah. And then it's not in control of me anymore. So if somebody else does tell my story, I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think that's key. And I think we should kind of like pause on that and elaborate on that a little bit more is releasing that hurt and those things that you're hiding from, because that's really what it is. Why it's in the shadows is because it's things that you don't necessarily want to be omnipresent and share because they are so hurtful, because it is embarrassing, because it is traumatizing, because in your mind, you're thinking people will perceive you in a different light. They will think of you as less than. And for me, a lot of my shadow work included releasing victimization, because I never ever wanted to be viewed as a victim, no matter what I went through or how I experienced it or, what it was. I never wanted to be a victim. And I felt like by vocalizing it, I was giving the other people power. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty, by remaining silent, by being the bigger person, by not saying anything, by not telling my story. And I'm not saying you have to get online and share your story unless you absolutely want to. Do what you need to do to heal for you, boo, and tell everybody. But you need to Rose's point, be able to confidently and have a very safe space where you can say, this was my experience. This hurt me. And I'm saying your experience because, and I say this all the time, I'm sure you've heard that, there are 3 versions of every story, his side, her side, or her side, and then the truth. But I don't believe that, because everybody experiences the same thing differently. So I feel like your experience is yours alone. So you can't tell me about my experience, and I have no right to tell you about your experience. I don't care if it's a therapist or a medical doctor or whomever. No one can tell you about your experience. So I say all that to say, what your experience is your truth. In essence, is what you've experienced. So you have every right to speak it however you choose to. And when you do that, it does release you from everything that you felt like has been holding you down and that's been weighing on your subconscious and on your spirit.
The shame of it all, right?
The shame of it all. And when you tell your story, you own it, like Rose said. And nobody, no matter what version they tell, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you know what your experience was and they know what their experience was too, honey.
And that's why before I started putting myself out on social media, I had to really sit with myself, because being on social media, you're open to millions of people's opinions, people who don't know you, and they're just judging you based off of a picture or what you post online, maybe what you put on a podcast, anything. And that could be hard if you don't know who you are. So like, I knew for a fact, a physic, that girl, before you get online posting pictures and shit, make sure that you're solid, because you're sensitive, and I'm still sensitive. And I had to tell myself, like, stop it. If somebody don't like my picture, I don't care. I like my picture. I like me. My picture, everything doesn't have to be perfect, or it's perfect to me. Like, that's another thing with perfection, because people say you can never be perfect, but yes, you can, because my idea of perfect could be exactly my idea of perfect. And it's never going to be your idea. Kacee's idea of perfectionism is going to be different from mine. So then when she looks at me, she's like, oh, that's not perfect. Yes, because it's not her idea. My idea is. So.
And I think that's a key conversation too, because even in like putting this podcast together, we were both kind of in the space of, I don't really want to put too much out. I don't want to share. I don't want to talk about what I do. I'm very humble. I don't want to talk about my business. I don't want to talk about it and blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like you said, based on the pictures you post, based on whatever facade you created or whatever online persona or how it's translated, because that's what's important. You can put out whatever you want to, and you can even be as clear and intentional as you want. You can even write a freaking 4-page long caption that depicts from start to finish who you are and and people will still make up their mind about who you are, what you're trying to present to the world. So what we decided was screw it all, screw everybody in their opinion. I'm gonna say what I have to say. I'm gonna post what I want to post. I'm gonna pull up how I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna look how I want to look. Because at the end of the day, they're still gonna say what they've been saying.
Yes.
Period. They're still gonna be like, oh, they're lying. They don't do this. They don't do that. Oh, that business is fake. They ain't got no money. Okay. Hello. Okay. But thanks for viewing. We appreciate you.
We do. We appreciate you.
Nonetheless, whatever your intentions are, we appreciate it.
And honestly, women and men, whoever are listening, like, both me and Kacee are life coaches, right? And we are like a very strong pillar in our family, and our family can come to us and talk to us about anything, because I know for a fact with my family too, and the other women that I do help, is that I wanted to create not just a safe space, but a space that they felt like they belong, no matter how it looked. It was kind of designed and created for you. although everything is different for each and every person, I wanted people and women to, whoever, come to us and just feel like, wow, like, I just feel like I'm supposed to be here, because they are. Because I always say, I am not my sister's keeper. I am my sister, meaning that we are connected. So no matter if you always say, oh, that can never be me. Yes, it was you.
The girl, it was. It was me. It was.
Look at it. And stop. And that's where we judge. We keep on judging each other because it makes us feel a little bit better about who we are. And that tells us that we need to do some shadow work. If you have a notion to say something out your mouth about somebody else's life, you need to work on something that's inside of you. And I'm not saying you can't give opinion, because we do it all the time. We look at celebrities' lives, but then you have to reel it back and say, I really don't know. Because you don't know.
You don't know. And I think that's what's important too, is forgiving yourself and allowing yourself to heal. Like, I know a lot of the women that I have worked with, a lot of the conversations have been speaking from those unhealed places, right? And when I say, like, share your experiences and tell your story, is absolutely perfectly fine. But at some point, you have to change that narrative and make sure that it's not one that's completely detrimental to your soul and your spirit, even though it's weighing on you heavily. So I'm not taking away from you having negative experiences or having had a difficult time or still being in that difficult space and trying to navigate out of it. And I'm not saying that you need to speak highly of people who do you wrong or who are complete, like, just assholes to you. Like, let's be real about it. People are who they are. You are who you are. But at the same time, the narrative that you create and the way that you speak about people kind of speaks to yourself. And when you're calling on those people and you're calling them names and you're doing whatever you need to do, like you said, judging their life, it's from an unhealed space. And I do that. I'm human. And so when I do that, I have to remember that that's where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of hurt. And how much of that hurt can I control? I can't control all of it, because it has to leave your body, your mind, and your soul when it has to leave your body. But you also have to be active and intentional when you hear it out loud and you're saying, like, okay, let me take a step back. And I will say that I'll be like, okay, I shouldn't have said that. That's not fair, because it's not. It may be the truth.
My truth.
My experience, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a narrative that you continue with. So the final piece, self-love. We talked about self-sabotage. We talked about the imposter syndrome. We talked about the shadow work, and the shadow work is ugly. Let me just go back to that real quick, because I'm sure we can speak on that. About that meme we sent to each other. What was the one, that movie, John Q? What is that actress name? The mom, Kimberly?
Oh, we're going to have to post a picture for you guys.
Okay. So Rose sent this meme, and it's basically about, it's like, what healing looks like, or what people think it's like. And it's like a picture of her all pretty and done up. And then it's like what it actually looks like. And this child, when she's on the edge of that bed praying, I know y'all know what I'm talking about in John Q. And she looked up and she's just looking distraught. That's real life.
Yes.
I tell you, that is exactly like and when Rose sent that to me, I was like, girl, I look just like that. I remember that night. I was kneeling on the edge of my bed, calling on the ancestors, God, and everybody's spirit in the world to please just release me from this bondage, and just from feeling the way that I was feeling and experiencing what I was experiencing and hurting the way I was hurting and crying the way I was crying. And I was like, please just take this from me. I don't want to have this experience anymore. That's healing. It ain't pretty. It's not sitting there with your roses and your sage and your Palo Santo and your incense and going, that ain't it. That's not it. It's ugly. It's lucid dreaming. It is vision. I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Irritability.
Oh, it's irritability. It's you cussing out yourself and cussing out other people. It's you being mad at your kids when they call your name. It's you. Oh, my thing when I'm at work and they keep saying my name. I would be in my office like, why are you saying my name? Everything just irritated my soul. Mm-hmm. That is a part of it. So how do we get to translate that into self-love so that we can move beyond that?
Ooh, my favorite. And that's another buzzword, but hey, it's a good buzzword. Like, we need people to be more aware of self-love. Even like the book that we wrote is preface on self-love. Yep. Everything starts with you. And I didn't know this. I did not know this. I thought it was somebody else's job to love me. Honest to God. Nobody ever told me, hey, Rose, this is how you practice self-love growing up. And no fault of their own. They probably just didn't know it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, so what is self-love? Because when you don't love yourself, somebody else has your power, right? And then now they control it. And so having somebody else control how you love yourself is not a good thing. It just feels like you're being pushed and pulled, thrown away, taken apart, broken.
Away.
Yeah, like all of that, right? So how do you get to a place of actually loving yourself? Is actually first step is realizing that you don't really love yourself. You're not honoring yourself. You're dishonoring yourself by saying yes to things that you want to say no to,
yep.
by allowing people to disrespect you and
yep.
feeling a certain type of way, by not taking care of yourself. And when I say not taking care of yourself, not just your physical, your internal body, by not listening to your feelings. You're not practicing self-love. You're by not drinking your water, by knowing that you're lactose intolerant, but you're going to eat the mac and cheese anyway.
That's Rose's favorite. That's why she said that.
Lactose intolerant, though.
She doesn't want to eat the mac and cheese.
So, yeah, I'm like, where was I? Where was I, girl? Help me out.
So you were talking about the way that you dishonor yourself. So.
Okay, yes. There's so many. There's so many ways. Let me see, for me personally, how I dishonor myself is, again, allowing my power to be controlled by other people, by allowing my opinion of myself to be controlled by other people.
That's huge.
By procrastinating on things that I know can make me better. That was dishonoring myself, right? So there's so many ways I realized that I wasn't loving myself as much as I thought I was. And when you realize that, it's kind of hard to go back. Not saying that you won't ever go back, because you still go learning it.
Yeah.
But you're conscious now. Before you were asleep. I didn't understand that whole sleep and woke thing either. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like, what do you mean by sleep and woke? Until I woke up. So when you're asleep, it's your unconscious mind kind of leading you, those patterns, those cycles. I always tell somebody, if you want to see how the next 3 years of your life is going to be, let's look back at your last 3 years.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't made any changes, I can assure you it's going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Unconscious, you sleep. Subconscious, or consciously, is when you are actually actively thinking. You're aware now. You understand the kind of pros and cons. And that's a whole illusion anyway. But the things that are not healthy to your higher self versus the things that are healthy to your higher self. So you have a choice now on what you want to choose. So you're awoke. You're aware of it. You know what's happening. Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So how do we start to love ourselves? Take it away, darling.
Okay, so it's Self-Care Sunday. So that is absolutely one. And it doesn't have to be just Sundays, but I think that Sundays are awesome because it's a great time to pivot. So you have the opportunity to reassess or reevaluate the week behind you, the week that you left behind, and say, okay, here were some did wells. Here are some things that went amazing. Here are some missed opportunities, some things that I would like to improve and work on for the following week, and then kind of pre-plan for how you would like things to be for the week ahead. So in this space is when it's time for you to take care of yourself. So I know self-love and self-care looks different for everybody. It might be lighting candles. It may be taking a bath. Maybe it's a spiritual bath. Maybe it is adding bath salts, or maybe it's a bath bomb. Maybe it's not even taking a bath. It's just taking a nice, hot, steamy shower and allowing all those distressful moments and spaces to wash away from you. Maybe it's drinking a cup of tea. Maybe it's drinking a couple of glasses of wine or empty the bottle. You know, whatever you got to do, just work on you for you. Maybe it's journal entries. Maybe it's taking a walk. Maybe you got to go get your nails done. Maybe you need a wax. Maybe you need your hair done. Maybe you need a haircut. Whatever you have to do so that you're honoring yourself. Or maybe it's just saying, no, I'm not doing anything, and laying in the bed or laying on the couch and binging on Netflix.
Yes.
But it's also about being cognizant of what it is that you are working on. So it's not just an escape from your reality. It is intentionally saying, here is me pouring into myself so that I can be my best self or present my best self to the world going forward.
Mm-hmm. Everything starts with you.
Ends with you.
Yeah.
It's all about you.
It's all about, and it's not being selfish. It's being selfful. Mm-hmm.
So before we go out, because I like the way you said that, selfful, I want to talk about that a little bit as being moms. We talk about that a lot. And I don't know who created this. I'm just going to blame it on men because men do everything. But who created this notion that moms are supposed to be so selfless that they're not supposed to be a human, let alone a woman. They're just supposed to be a mom. Mm-hmm. And speaking from the mom's perspective, both of us, I know it's hard sometimes to find those pockets of time to celebrate and to care for yourself because of the world's notions and the way that we've been conditioned that you have to be a mom first. But you're not a mom first. You're Rose first. You're Kacee first. I can't be my best self for Cadence if I'm not my best self. If I don't take care of me and make sure that I'm in a good space mentally, physically, spiritually, if I'm not drinking my water, if I'm not meditating, if I'm not releasing and stretching and, you know, doing shopping or whatever I need to do for myself, I can't do anything for my daughter, period.
I'm glad you said that.
Say that again?
I'm glad you said that.
I know, because we were talking about it last week about how guilty we feel, like, and I'll use that experience. I don't know, it was last week or the week before, and I was like, oh my God, I've been in the nail salon for 4 hours. Like, the world's gonna fall apart. It's not. My daughter is fine. She's taken care of. But I feel this anxiety coming because it's always like my kid, which of course, love your kid. You have to take care of your kid. You got to go to work. You have to do all these things to, you know, maintain some sort of equilibrium and balance, which is a complete facade in and of itself, but that's neither here nor there. But in your mind, it's always like, I gotta get back. I gotta go because I shouldn't be doing this. And it's just wrong.
It is.
So your take, Rose.
Yeah, it leads to resentment because I did see somebody was like, you know, I'm a mom, I can't do self-care. I'm like, yes, you can. And you need to do self-care.
You got to.
You have to. Because sometimes we show frustration and we're angry or yelling. We don't have to.
Kid.
Because they're our trigger, because I'm annoyed right now. I just need to breathe. And self-care looks like breathing, deep breathing. Like, we're not saying that you need to take a whole hour. We say 5 minutes, but it could be a minute of you just consciously breathing. Inhaling and exhaling. That is self-care. So for the moms out there, the women out there who are parents, please, 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 just take 1 minute, 60 minutes to yourself. And
I have to say this too. One of the things that I do is I had a hard time with transitions. I would never transition. I would just go from one thing to the next. So one of the things that I do now to consciously transition from one space to another is, so when I leave in the morning to go to work, I sit in the garage for a minute before I leave and transition from mom and all of that to work, right? So I'm on my drive to work, I'm transitioning. On my way home, I do the same thing. Shut down, shut off. And I'm listening to my ratchet music. I'm getting ready to get into my space and I drive back. And then I sit in the garage for a minute and I allow work to be gone and the day and the emails and the text messages and the phone calls and the conference calls and the Zoom meeting to be gone. And then I come home and I'm a mom. So you can create spaces, because they're not real spaces, it's mental spaces and mental breaks for yourself in having those moments to care for yourself so that you're transitioning from one thing to the next. It's perfectly okay to stop what you're doing and say, I need a minute. Because I can't just run right into this next thing. I overwhelm myself. I can't speak for you, but I overwhelm myself greatly by thinking that I have to manage everything on my palette at the same time and give it all the same amount of attention, because you can't.
Ooh. Speak to us, honey. Speak to us.
That's it. That's what I got. So you want to take us out? What's our quote?
Oh, yes. Give me a second. Our quote is going to be from Nelson Mandela. And it is, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Nelson Mandela.
I love that so much. I think we get so afraid of fear that we don't think about where it comes from and we're not doing our shadow work and understanding it. And fear is okay. It's okay to be afraid, but letting fear rule you is where we find issues.
Your success is on the other side of that fear.
There's love on the other side of that fear. There are new experiences on the other side of that fear. There is you shedding your old self is on the other side of that fear. There's so much on the other side of that fear. So what are we looking for from our marketable women for this week?
So we are going to be looking for you all lovely ladies to, one, think about some shadow work or some parts of you that you have hidden. Write it down, speak it out loud in the shower, whatever you want to do. And bring that to light, right? Bring it up. Let it get some light. And then see how that's showing up in your life right now. Another thing for our marketable woman is think about some ways that you can pour into yourself doing self-care. Like, what are some things that you find joy in? Like, what are some hobbies that you have that you like? What do you like to do for you? And do them. And what's the other thing we talked about today? We did talk about fear of success and self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So what can we leave them with for that?
Yeah. So I think when you're tying into your shadow work and figuring out those things that trigger you, why those trigger you, and how is it translating into your life now? So what roles do you feel like, what makes you anxious? What about the next phase in your life? Are you afraid to take that next step? Are you afraid to take another class because you're going to be 34 when you finish it? Child, you're going to be 34 anyway, so you might as well take the course. Do you want to become an esthetician, but you're afraid of the hours? Do you want to become a blogger, but you feel like your writing skills aren't what they need to be? Like, what a part of this fear translates from where you came from, or maybe how you were conditioned? So what is preventing you from taking that next step in your life? Or what is the next step in your life?
Yes, and we invite you, if you need any help, reach out to us. You can find us at marketablewoman.com. We'll put all the details below. We'll even drop a number that if you want to text or call us and set up a consultation or just a meeting with us, that's what we do, and that's what we're here for. Yeah. It's all peace and love.
Peace and love and business mentorship. Remember, we're here also.
Yes,
and we're the self-care blog should be out this week also. So pay attention to marketablewoman.com for updates, and let us know how you feel about it. What are your thoughts?
We'll have the link below for that too. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, share if you like this video. We appreciate you.